Hey, Ady,
Hey, Brooke.
how are you doing?
I'm doing perfect. Excellent.
Awesome. So we are kind of in between holidays here.
Mhm.
Like we just had Halloween, we've got Thanksgiving coming up, and there's other holidays, November, December, there's just tons of stuff. So what are some things that you like to do for the holiday season?
Well, not me particularly, but I have two daughters that are like 10 and 5. The boy is not old enough, and they really are like enjoying like all of those holidays. I mean, Halloween, yeah, they want to have some kind of disguise. So it's always fun to see, and I let them pick their own costumes.
Nice.
And then like Thanksgiving is mostly Black Friday, but I think I'm gonna avoid it this year because I already overspent.
Yeah,
And then Christmas, hopefully for the first time in a long time, I'm gonna enjoy to take some holiday vacation. I just need a
good.
break at the
Yeah.
end of the year. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to that.
Well, okay, so talk about that because I know right now you're planning what's called TinyConf. So tell
Yes.
us more about what is TinyConf and what are you doing with that?
Yeah, so like with the Angular schedule, with the updates of about every other 6 months. And then at the same time, I'm not sure if people have seen, there's been a boom in like the community, like being very, very like sharing and transparent and like talking about all of this stuff. I'm like, we cannot wait a whole year, to get an Angular conference. We need like a tiny conf,
Yeah,
something where people can quickly come and share some ideas or like the new way of doing things, and then giving to people the space where they can be a first-time speaker. So that's how Angular TinyConf came about. We
nice.
had one in French about a few months ago. This one will be in English on December 2nd, and that would be my last thing for anything Angular related for the rest of the year.
Nice. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a good plan. Take some time off, but that's
Yeah.
exciting. I think what a great idea. And you're right, because I think a lot of people do want to get into speaking, but it's really hard, first of all,
Mhm.
to get accepted to larger conferences, and it's scary.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
I love it.
So
I think it's great.
yeah, that's the perfect launch pad, and it's all online, at least for now. And it's about anywhere from like the 5 minutes lightning talks to the 15 minutes to the 25 minutes. And
Yeah.
the crazy thing is I could never fathom that I will have 20 speakers lined up right now for it. I have not only 20 speakers but 20 awesome speakers, like, with some very cool stuff. I think you guys are going to be in for a treat.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I've seen the lineup already, and
Yeah,
it's going to be good. So, yeah.
exactly.
But thank you for organizing that. I know how much work it takes to organize things, and
It's been crazy, but worth it.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. So, but thank you for being here. This
Mhm.
this series is really special to me because education is just sort of baked into my core. And
Mhm.
I'm not afraid to say, although I have been in the past, but now I'm not afraid to say that learning Angular was not easy for me. It
Oh,
it
yes.
came with a huge learning curve. I had to kind of change the way my brain was thinking.
Yes.
And that's what this series is really all about, is not just for people struggling to get into it and to learn Angular, but even just once you have learned it, there are still,
Oh, yeah.
always there's things with new versions,
Yep.
updates. You've always got to learn something new. And I think it helps to hear what other developers have been through, what worked for you, what didn't, that kind of thing. And I know that you have some really good stories to share. So I'm excited to hear about your learning path and
Uh-huh.
some of the things that you would like to share on the topic. So
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
good.
Let's get it going. Yep.
Okay. I think it should really start though with kind of your background. So let's start with where you are today. So everybody, he's currently working as a front-end software engineer, and you've really quite quickly, I think, made quite the name for yourself because of all of the conferences that you've spoken at, or like I know you've been on podcasts and now with TinyConf.
Hmm.
But take us back before all of this, Ady. Like where I know that you um I can't remember what country. What country are you from originally?
Senegal, West
Okay,
Africa.
from Senegal. So
Yes.
is that where you learned how to code, or where did the origins of your coding experience start?
Actually, I came in the US in 2000. And before that, I did not write a single line of code. I always been like those, your curious kid that instead of enjoying the video game, I mean, at the time we were like having Ataris and Nintendos, instead of enjoying your typical video game, I wanted to know how it was built. So, and even when I was younger, I would just break toys actually instead of playing with them because I wanted to know what was speaking behind and all that kind. I always had that curiosity about how things worked.
Yeah.
So when I came, I was like, okay, a lot of people go into electrical engineering and stuff. I was like,
Right.
yeah, maybe I'll do computer science. But I stumbled upon a PHP class with a guy named Ed Parrish.
Okay.
And I tried to emulate a lot of his teaching style actually, because he really, really was a special teacher to me, you know. So and then that's where I started. Like my first line of code was around PHP and then some Java and stuff like that. And then the rest, like we say, is history. Yeah. So
Okay.
2001, 2000, end of 2000 was my first line of officially writing my first line of code. Yeah.
Okay. So Senegal being your home country, I know that French is the primary language spoken there, right?
Yeah, that's the official language there.
Okay. So you came to the States, you were already speaking English by that point, but I'm always kind of curious when I talk to people who, you know, where English is your second language. What was your experience learning how to program? Did you find it just, you know, like any other learning, or did you find that it was harder because there was less information, less material, or was there just as much?
Yeah, definitely harder because at the understanding, when it came to like understanding things in depth, it was hard to draw a mental model. Like now when I look at it, like, you know, 20 years later,
Yeah.
I'm like a mental model is essential in learning, you know, being
Right.
able, and coming from Senegal, we are a culture that is very big on metaphors. And I could not find the right metaphor or anything like that. So, and all of my literature was in French, and there was no equivalent of like the books that I was like looking for. So I was really sometimes lost in like some concepts. And then of course I was in JavaScript. And then when they talk about closure, I'm like, okay, are they talking about a relationship that went bad? Something like that? I mean, the thing sometimes the vocabulary used in like, you know, some of the terms and stuff like that are not very intuitive, or at least for not somebody who's not a native speaker. And yeah, some of those were real struggle at some point. I kind of had to adapt and started learning like my drawing my new mental models. Yeah, that's basically, I think that was the biggest struggle for a while.
I can see that. And it's not dissimilar to, because I agree, like my best learning always took place when someone was drawing up those analogies for me and comparing things to everyday life. But yeah, I mean, put the language on top of that, and that's got to make it twice as hard. So what were some things that you did that you felt like helped lower that barrier, or was there nothing and you just had to like push through it?
Well, at first there was nothing, and I started like assuming things. Now, the part that made it like worse, that made that effort worthwhile was when I went into the validation process. And the validation process was when I started teaching those stuff and saying like, this is how I understanding things. And then people would tell me, oh, okay, but I think you are listening, you are like, you are thinking that this is what this means, but not. But it was really like a humility, being very humble. I think like I said to some of my students, the first time I heard about closure was during a job interview, and it did not end up well, you know. So, but yeah, that was that. There was a validation process. I was kind of like in the Silicon Valley, there was a lot of very good programmers. And I became very good at like, you know, just grabbing a coffee with somebody and starting talk. That was before the YouTube era and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so it was just like, okay, I think this is what this means. and then finding somebody who was a little more experienced, what does it mean? And then really, really be able to say, I am dumb, explain it to me in layman's terms, you know?
Oh, yeah. Okay, so a couple of things I pull out of that. First of all, I find that very brave that you were willing to go teach others, even though you didn't necessarily understand everything, perfect. Because I think there's this assumption, and I'm very guilty of this too, oh, Brooke the educator, Brooke the teacher.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to have the answers. Like everyone is expecting me to know everything. And so I get a little bit like, oh my gosh, like, how can I go teach, or how can I give a talk when I don't understand it perfectly? So that I think was really brave of you. But
thank you.
Yeah, so like kind of speak to that though, because you are not the first person I've talked to who has said that teaching was one of their most effective ways to learn yourself. So
Well,
is that what you found?
Oh yeah. I think like when I say I'm teaching, you have to put it in perspective that I am my first student. So to me, I don't know, I get into those personas where I'm Ady the teacher, and I'm saying to Ady the teacher, now how do I find a way and the vocabulary? Because I always felt like our biggest problem in software in general, academia, is vocabulary.
Right.
And I'm like, how do I find a way to draw that mental model and then explain it to somebody who doesn't even care about programming,
Mm-hmm.
In another episode, I'll tell you, for example, how I broke down the binary search to some of my friends who were not interested in programming.
Okay.
And who felt so empowered because I just found an example that made sense to them.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
to me, the teaching part was that was like, okay, I have now, because teaching, if you really think about it, we are teaching math from the lower grades to university.
Right.
It's still math, but the way that we approach it with the audience point of view, how we teach math in the lower grade is not the same how we teach it at the university. And then I was like, okay, what is the building blocks here? What are the building blocks? What are the very first things that I need to and then have this Lego system of putting those together. So to me, that really changed the way that I approach everything. And yeah.
So treating yourself like the student then, basically.
Exactly.
I love that. Okay. Yeah. That's really cool. And then, okay, now the other thing you said there that also you're not the first person to say this about, so hopefully for people watching, you're noticing some patterns here, because you, like Jordan Powell, like Laura Newsome and others, have said that you sat down and would talk to people. If you had questions, you were taking them out to lunch, sitting down, asking them things that you didn't understand, getting that clarification. And to me, I think this is really important, because so many of us talk about how we're introverts and how it's for us to get out of our shells. And yet it's that social factor, I think, that is, to me, one of these, it's connecting the dots. It seems like you got to break out of that, comfort zone of your safety. And then just, even if it's just with one person. So do you have suggestions on how to do that? What if someone is very introverted and going and asking someone to go out and have a drink, or even just meet, on Google Meet or something? What are some suggestions you could give for how they can reach out to someone and get some mentoring, or just get some questions answered?
Yeah. If I was to say to a lot of people right now who have now have known me now for a little bit, if I was to say that I'm a very shy person, most of them will not believe it. But my first nature is very shy. I don't talk to people easy. But the thing that I have developed is those personas, And I talked about it with Joe Eames when we did the speaker thingy for ng-conf. And I told him sometimes when I need something, I switch to a persona. For example, Goku has been Goku from the Super Saiyan. Goku, has been my hero when I was younger. And I'm Goku doesn't fear anybody. He's the most gentle superhero right there. But when he needs something, he's very humble and he's going to go ask for it. So I switch on and I become like Goku, and I'm like, okay, now Goku doesn't fear anything. Let me go ask for something.
Okay.
So and even in athletes, in pro athletes, they do that. They do have those personas sometimes where sometimes they have to like up their ego or like lower their ego, and they go through those little things. So that's been something that worked for me. I will just like put on the mantle of somebody who I am, who I want to emulate. And then I'm just going to take on or borrow, like, borrow those little characters from that figure or from that superhero for a little bit, until like, I build as I go, like I build my confidence up.
Okay.
Now I don't need Goku anymore, but he helped me a lot back in the days.
So it's that old saying of like, fake it till you make it. Basically.
Exactly. Like another way to look at that. And I'm saying like, it's very hard to approach people, but it's very easy to talk about passion, Right. So if your code is your passion and you are comfortable enough to put it out there and just say, hey, I just coded this solution. What you guys think about it? I've seen some people very talkative around code, but they cannot even tell you their first and last name, like if you're not talking about code. So the thing is to like play to those different, types and say, okay, I'm passionate about my code. Let me put it out there and let's see what people are thinking about it. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a certain level of fearlessness, I feel like, that goes with that, and not worrying about what other people say about the code, whether it's right.
I mean, that's something that you learn to, you get there at some point. And I think like there's at some point for me in the Angular world, I was only surrounded by people who I considered were very elite Angular people. And right. That was good, but that was a handicap too.
Yes.
Because I never felt like I could like get to their level. And I was always shy to share something because I was like, that would be so trivial for them.
Yes.
So it is good to diversify your community. There's people who are just barely starting to learn. Be with those people. There are people who are very advanced. Use them as mentors. But if you only have people who are very elite or always interacting with the Brandon Roberts, the fray, they are at a level where, where you're like, okay, I'm not there yet, but I don't even need to emulate that yet. I just need to be me and understand as I'm building up. And you need people like you who are at that same level so you can learn together and like grow together.
That I couldn't agree with that more, because that was my experience. I came out of education, a teacher, and went to a very brief boot camp, and was immediately, even before I graduated boot camp, was introduced to Joe Eames. And once I met Joe, it was like, oh, by the way, you're just immediately surrounded by all of these speakers and Joe and Aaron Frost. And I mean, that was my introduction to Angular, and talk about imposter syndrome.
Yes.
So I totally get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But no, I couldn't agree more. I think you're right. You do need to put yourself in those situations where there are people who are at or around your same level. But yeah, I mean, but always not being afraid to be around those elite developers as well, because it gives you something to shoot for.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So, okay, so we've talked about the programming. You mentioned PHP, but then when did you discover Angular, and what was that like for you when you first got into Angular?
Yeah, so people who have been through, I say that in sports, my life is complete. I saw Michael Jordan play in his prime. I saw Kobe Bryant play in his prime, and I saw LeBron James play in his prime. So, man, I'm the most spoiled, basketball fan ever. Yeah. But in the JavaScript world too, I was there when we were dealing with Netscape and we did not have anything. And then I think YUI and Prototype were the first library that kind of came out and started having this concept of having JavaScript libraries. And then most of my first 5 to 6 years of working professionally as a programmer was because of jQuery. And thank you, John Resnick, man. I don't think people give him enough props for what he has done for the JavaScript community. Paul Irish at the same time, and everybody who was involved in that project. But then at some point now, I start being called a senior developer. and then I get into this enterprise stuff, and there's a lot of things that we have to do ourselves on
Right.
top of the libraries that were around. And of course, we had clunky interfaces and everything like that. And Backbone was like, I think the one that really held a good promise. But like I said to the Angular people, the day that I saw the first time the ng-4, they had me there.
Yeah.
For me, that way to express yourself inside of the HTML template directly, in that way with the directive, there was just something very attractive about it that I cannot explain to this day. And I knew that me and Angular, that was gonna be like, a lifetime thing. I knew that it was for me, like right away, right there. I don't know why. Yeah.
It's fun to hear everybody's like different take on it, because like Jordan Powell, he was all about forms, and that was what
Exactly. Yeah.
hooked him in.
Yeah.
But okay, so then once you started learning it, was there something in particular that you found more difficult than other concepts, or not so much?
Yeah, the whole concept of digest cycle was very new to me. I mean, we knew like about the JavaScript event loop, or to some extent just heard about it, but the whole digest cycle and the whole thing about controllers, directive, and we had that funny syntax that we have in Angular 1 and so forth and so on. And then all of a sudden they just like bury that whole thing and go to Angular 2.
Right.
And I really felt that day that I was just like, I was gonna die that day. I was like, no, man. I'm finally at the point where I feel like I'm getting this, and now the whole paradigm has shifted. I really considered like adopting another framework or another library at the time.
Yeah.
I was so scared because, I mean, my whole professional like life was around Angular at that time.
Yeah.
And now I had to go with that paradigm shift. So that was very, very hard. And then Angular is just not about the framework. It's about all of the other programming concepts that you kind of have to be aware of, like single responsibility principle, like dependency injection, and all those little things that come in there. And TypeScript now,
right,
like introducing. I mean, it was a scary moment that when 2 came out, but I'm glad I ended up sticking with it.
So how, like, what did you do specifically? Because I relate to that too. I think a lot of us do there, and I'm glad and grateful really that you're using the word scared, because I think it's a real thing. When we get comfortable programming, we get comfortable with being able to do certain things, and then all of a sudden things change, or we're asked to learn a new skill, a new library, and you kind of freeze, and it's like, oh my gosh, like, what is this, and how do I even begin? So what does that process look like for you when you have something new, and you're kind of scared, you're not sure what to do? How do you break it down and start actually digesting it?
So the thing that happened for me was I realized that at that moment that Angular passed the status of being a framework and was now a platform. Mm-hmm. If you really think about it, you have languages, you have now, I mean, as we went, we had Ivy, we had so many things where, depending on the needs of your projects and on the complexity or the not so complex projects, there were so many things at your disposal. So I felt like we finally got into this big supermarket with all these aisles. Sorry, I'm a metaphor guy.
No, I love it.
And then we could cook like any type of recipes if we just knew like the right ingredients that we needed for it. And then at that moment, I just got like liberated. I'm like, I don't need to know the whole thing.
Okay.
If I'm gonna do a new recipe, I just need to know the ingredients, find people who already had done this, and then emulate it. And then I focus on knowing how to learn domains that I did not know, like forms, for example. If you were to tell me right now to do an Angular form for you, I'll be like, give me 48 hours, I'll be right back. And I'll go, now I know how to learn what I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the biggest difference. I am comfortable with anything in Angular because if you give me 48 to 72 hours, I can be an expert in that side of the platform. There are areas where I'm very good at because those are the ones that interest me. Anything that has to do with performance, and stuff like that. And there's areas where I have surface knowledge, but now I know how to go and get in depth if I need to. And I'm okay with that. And I'm so okay with not knowing. And that's the very first thing that I say to people. I don't know anything that you're talking about, but let me go find out.
Yes, perfect. Okay, I feel like you're really getting into something important here. That just coming to that point and being able to say that, I think is huge, right? Like, how many of us feel like we can't admit, especially once you're hired somewhere, you have that job, you feel like you have to be at a certain level, like they're expecting you to know things and you just don't. And I think it really shows that sign of like arrival in a way, that you can finally be at that point where you can just say exactly what you said. I don't know, but I can go find out and I'll do it confidently. So then what are your steps? Like so keep digging into that, keep going where
so in the context of work, for example, when I come in and I know, for example, I'm still like struggling with NGRX and RxJS in general. Right. I'm at a decent level now. So Brandon and Alex, I'm at a decent level now. Nice. But I'm still getting up there. But what I do now is like, I'm just gonna go find who's the champion in that domain. Okay. And I'm gonna be their friend. I'm gonna say, hey, like just right now, I set up like a recurring meeting with Kyler Johnson that you know in the Angular community. Yes. We happen to be co-workers now. And I just want him to show me like what he knows. And he's very into RxJS. He's very into component store. I have no problem going to him and say, hey, teach me about it. Or let's pair. If I have a ticket on it, the first thing that I do in the Slack UI channel, who want to pair code with me? I mean, and then I will put in parentheses, / really help me get out of this one. So like, with the humor. But the thing is like really in a humble way, find the people who are champion in these areas. If I'm at work and they're already there available, man, I'm gonna go bug them, man. Hey man, can you help me? Can we pair code for even 30 minutes? Or even if you don't have 30 minutes, if somebody was to give you this ticket, what would be the first 5 steps that you would do? How would you approach it? Or like, one other thing that I found out, which is very cool, look at existing PR that was approved. What was the approval process? What kind of code did they put in there and stuff like that? And sometimes, even if you don't have the luxury of being in a team, go to the Angular project and look at the PR process there, and the notes that are in there. Look at like your heroes and how do they code certain solutions. And then that's it. That's really what it is, I mean, we are people of habits and we copy whatever is in our environment and we emulate that until we understand that. And finally, we master it. Yeah. Copy, emulate, then master it. That's it.
I love it. I think this is such good. It seems so simple, but when you're on right, like it does. But then when you're in the job, you're living it, and you're feeling that pressure. I think it's easy to feel. Like I said, it's just easy to forget all of that and feel like if you say anything or ask questions, it's exposing you or whatever. But I love your advice there. Throw in some humor. Yes. Be approachable, be friendly, put on a smile. And I think when you can do those things, then people are happy to share their time with you. That's one of my favorite things about the Angular community, right? Is how eager everyone is to share and teach and contribute. So
exactly.
Super important. Now, okay, so I hear a lot of developers who talk about like this eat, sleep, code process, and you're someone, I think you're all over. Like I see you on podcasts, I see you at this conference and that conference and on Twitter. And so I know you're actively out and around engaging in the community, adding content. I think it would be easy for someone to say that, oh, that's Ady. It's eat, sleep, code, eat, sleep, code. But do you follow that principle? Do you feel like if someone really is going to be successful as a developer, that they need to just, go like spend over hours and just completely give themselves to the job?
No, au contraire. Like they will say in French, au contraire, no. Because I did the eat, sleep, code for a while. I mean, there was about a stretch of 5 to 6 years of my life. That's all I did, And there's even the funny backstory where like in my sleep, I was talking about Ruby, and my wife was like, "Who's Ruby? You know, a girl named Ruby." I'm like, you
Oh,
know,
no.
no. It's not about no. Ruby, the code, Ruby on Rails. So I mean, there was a stretch of mine because the thing is, when I'm trying to solve a problem, I'm very stubborn. You know,
Right.
It's in my head. It's not letting me, and stuff like that. And I try to power through, I have to go find the solution now. And then I have a working solution, but I'm not satisfied. It's not eloquent because I'm going to have to share it, put it on a YouTube tutorial. I have so many tutorials that never saw the light of day because I was too perfectionist about it.
Right.
And I saw that my life was not sustainable when I just was trying to do that. So the thing for me now, I got to a point where I'm very comfortable in getting a solution first. We can always make it more performance or optimize it later. But let's just get to the solution first and stuff like that. And I have kids, and I'm like, it is their right to have my time, not the other way around.
Right.
It's not a gift to them. It is their right to have their dad around and to be fully present. So that, there's times where I'm away from the computer. It's me and my daughter's time. And same thing with my wife. So that's the thing there where I'm like, okay, it's not coding for 60 hours a week that makes you a great coder.
Right.
But how do you solve the 60-hour-a-week problem into a 20-hour-a-week of coding? I code less, but I feel like I make more impact because when I go and sit down to code, the code is more pertinent, more relevant because I took the time to think about it, to see 2 or 3 use cases or stuff like that. So I think when I take more of my time now, it's not coding anymore. It's a craft. It became a craft to me. So the little details matter. How do you name the variables? Are you really tapping into something that Angular already has? Or are you trying to build something else? And all those little things. So code is the last step for me now, where before code was the first step. Okay. And then you burn, and then you keep coding until you get out of it. But now code being the last step, I make less mistakes, and it's more manageable now.
Yeah. I love that. And so you've found a good balance. And for me, I agree, because I've definitely been in those days where it's just grind away, 4 or 5 hours straight of trying to figure something out, and then going back for another 4 or 5 hours later. And you can only do that for so long, but you have to let your brain rest as well.
Yeah.
So, okay, then is there anything now that you feel like you would go back and tell yourself at an earlier stage, or things that you wish that you had known before when you were first getting into programming, or when you were first diving into Angular? Are there things that you wish that you could have known at the beginning, or that you would give yourself advice for at this point? Yeah,
I think one of the first, and I don't know why I did not apply it to myself, but one of the videos that kind of changed my programmer's life was one from Paul Irish, who said what I learned from the jQuery source code, and that was back in 2003 or 2004 when he got that video out. But that was him going step by step in how jQuery was put together, and the different patterns and stuff that were written there that he learned so much about. And he even said that some of it did not make sense to him at first, but staying with it got him to be a better JavaScript coder. And I wish that when I started, I wasn't shy enough to not go into the Angular source code, or be part of going at least to the GitHub side of Angular and trying to understand some concept. To me, when I looked at Angular, it was just in that black box, and then just creating magic for me. I never thought that I would be able to even open the source code and make sense out of it. Now I'm doing that. And my personal goal is maybe someday I'll contribute to it. But I really had that wall that it was some magic voodoo that was being done. And I was not good enough to even and comprehend it. And I really regret that to this day.
Yeah. Is it something that you wish maybe somebody had introduced you to, like had, maybe at one of your earlier jobs or a mentor or of some kind who had, do you feel like that's something that would be helpful for other people knowing, oh, I'm working with this junior developer, maybe we should go look at GitHub or we should go look at this and that documentation? Is that, would you agree with that? Or
Yeah, if you run into people like that, give them a big hug and don't let them go. In our industry, if you run it, I run into a guy like that who, there was one, we were solving something, and he said, like, I don't understand how they put this. Let's just go to the source code and check it out. I'm like, the source code? What are you talking about?
that? Yeah.
I wish I met people like that earlier. And if you can emulate that for the junior developers, it's gold, because when you are coding and we just copy pasting or even like just emulating something, because emulating, you might have a little understanding of it. Everybody knows how to put like, a new channel and everything like that. But how does the channel comes in and everything? Because emulating is not understanding. So that emulating can be fine and you can be very good at that. But when to use, for example, like behavior subject versus the async pipe. What are the, and those things, having somebody taking the time to show the source code and how to navigate it. So it's kind of very hard because Angular is a huge project.
Right.
It's a huge project, you cannot put that on the Angular team to do that. That's not their responsibility. They just have to stabilize the framework. So when you see those champions out there that are willing to do that, I'm trying to do that, but my knowledge is so, it's not to the point to where I can just say, hey, come just ask me the question. No, right. But that's the type of understanding that I want for myself. If you have people like that in the community, like I always botch his name, Enea Jaholari. That guy is precious, man. Every single day he is giving us some gold about the documentation or stuff that are coming. And sometimes he has even a stack blitz about it. So I don't even know how he's not a GDE yet. But if you have people like that, hug them, even virtual hug, and then wish them the best and respect what they're putting out there, because it's not easy.
Yeah. Oh, totally. Mm-hmm. So speak to that a little bit more about working with junior developers. And, you've mentioned for you, if you don't understand something, you're just kind of putting out there in Slack, hey, can someone compare program with me? Mm-hmm. What are some things that you feel like have been really helpful for you as you've sought out that guidance and that instruction from other developers? What are things that they were doing that made learning easier for you?
Yeah, they have to be open to it first. There are some people who you just don't want to bug because that's not their it's not that they're not nice people, that's just not their nature.
Right.
So the thing is, you have to learn how to ask nicely. So for example, I will just not come if it's something on Twitter. Now I'm comfortable enough to tag Brandon, Shoutran, Enea, and even Josh Moroni in some of my tweets, because we have built that rapport. I just did not start just doing it. Out of the blue, they don't know who you are, and you tagging them or DMing them. You have to know that beside you, there's maybe another 500 people who want to have that same type of relationship. So build the rapport first, just put it out there without tagging anybody, and see who's responding and who's engaging in that conversation. And when they start engaging in that conversation, be polite, be respectful, and remind them that you are really appreciating that they're taking the time, because they're giving you a free education and a free insight. And get better, start getting better. And I cannot even tell you sometimes when I do something and they just give me the thumbs up or tell me, or at ng-conf, when I saw all my heroes in the first row, and I saw how their face were glowing in appreciation, because I was doing something that they felt like was the right way. That was the biggest moment for me. At the end of the day, when I had Brandon there, Alex there, Minko was somewhere in the stuff, and people were appreciating what I was doing, that was a very, very, very special moment to me. And a guy like Sam Julian, who found me in a very dark place at some point and was taking calls at midnight and pulling me back up. I gave him a long hug at ng-conf, and I'm not going to be emotional on this show today, but the thing is, show appreciation. At the end of the day, we are a human being, and be polite and be kind in like, and if somebody tells you today, I don't have the time, don't say, hey, you jerk, why you don't have the time? You think you are a big deal. No, just know that he's a dad or she's a mom. She has other stuff to do, and say, all right, thank you politely. I mean, just be a human being, be a nice human being, and it's going to come back around for you. I think that I don't know if there's any other way to say this.
Yeah, no, I agree. You have to be grateful, definitely. And another thing you're touching on too that I think is really important is from the teacher's perspective is, you mentioned like looking out at everybody watching you on stage, and they were all there supporting you and encouraging you. And I can't emphasize enough how important that is. That sometimes it's so easy to get caught up in the actual teaching and the content that you forget how important it is to give those little encouraging thoughts and the support, and you've got this, and go work on this for half an hour and come back and reach out to me in half an hour. But you've got to let them have little victories. I think that's something we forget, is that you have to give learners little pieces at a time. Give them something that they can go accomplish in little bits and pieces. And then every time they accomplish one of those things, give them the encouragement that helps them to keep going and take on something a little bit more challenging. So definitely.
And then that contract of honesty too. I know for a fact when Joe Eames tells me that this is good, he means it.
Right.
He will not just throw me flowers just for the sake of whatever, because there's been many a time where I presented something else to him and he was tactful enough to tell me it's not good enough yet, keep on working on it. So that contract of honesty from the teacher to the student, when he looked at my slide and he looked at it and he was like, man, I like the flow. I know he means it, and that to me like is everything. So if you have those people in the community who now are at the level of where the teachers or people are listening to them, do not tell to somebody thumbs up if you don't mean it,
Right.
Tell them thumbs up when you really mean it. Or if you cannot give them a positive feedback because it's not good, don't say anything yet, and find a place where you can give them a constructive feedback, but have always that contract of honesty.
Yeah.
Because, when it comes from Joe or when it comes to some people from the community, I'm like, these people will never just throw me flowers. They will tell me how it is. And I need that. I need to hear that,
That's so true. So true. And I like what you said. If you don't have anything good to say, step back and wait until you're in that right place to say it. I think all too often as teachers, as mentors, you can be unknowingly careless with some of the things that you say. And, like even recently, there were some tweets going around about, it was my friend Jason Warner, who's very, very skilled developer, but even at work, he was struggling with something, and it took him like 3 days, but he got through it because he's brilliant. And by the end of that, someone had said something like, what, that took you 3 days, and I don't know that person meant to be offensive or hurtful, but still it's like, oh, yes, it was hard, but I think we need to be careful with when we're giving that constructive feedback, when we're saying, no, this really isn't the best way. I think we do need to be careful and not use words like, this is easy.
Yeah.
That was simple.
Yes.
It might be for you, but it's not for everybody.
No.
So, definitely.
Yeah.
Okay, one more thing, because this was something that you mentioned a little earlier, and I think is really important. It's actually something I've been thinking a lot about lately, and actually something that Laura Newsome mentioned a little bit as I was talking with her as well, and that was metaphors.
Yes.
For me, I had been, I went through boot camp, tried to learn, met with some people. Nothing was sticking in my head. Like I would learn something and then 5 days later it'd be gone. Nothing was sticking until Eric Slack, who mentored me, started. He's so good at these. He's so good at coming up with analogies and comparisons. And it made the world of difference to me. And it sounds like that was very much your situation too. So what, what can you say about that? Because honestly, Ady, like I read a lot of articles or I watch blogs and videos, and everybody just sticks so much to the technical jargon. It's all very just like, do this, do this, do this, do this, but there's never really any look at the final example, look at what you're trying to build, and here's an example of what, how I can make sense of that for you. So have you found any resources that do this well, or are you just coming up with them on your own? How is
that? I mean, mostly I've been coming up with them on my own because metaphor too have kind of are part of your personal experience. If you cannot really like talk about a metaphor that you don't understand or that you have not experienced.
Right.
But the thing is, like, find something that is common ground for everybody. So for example, I was telling you about the binary search. Do you know how I teach the binary search?
How's
that?
I
don't talk about index. I don't talk about upper index, lower index and stuff like that. I take somebody and I say, hey, somebody who never programmed or who's not a good programmer, who that's I'm like, okay, there's this algorithm. The moment you say algorithm, they're like, no, I don't want to have anything. So I'm like, no, you know already how to do it. You just don't know the vocabulary. And they're like, no, I'm not. I'm like, okay, here's a book, find page number, whatever. And without fail, most of them will go to the middle, find what the middle is, and start like, eliminating like the zone of search and then like narrowing down until they find the page. Because what? I'm like, okay, why did you do that? And they say like, oh, you told me, like, let's say the book had 1,000 pages and I asked them for number 300. They say like, if I go in the middle, it's either going to be like less or more. And then I can go back in the middle and stuff like that. I'm like, what you've been doing, you've been just already like, eliminating your zone of research. And you've been like cutting down the search in half every single time. And that's why we call it binary. Every single time that you're cutting it in half, you are doing that. But why did you do that with a book? And they're like, and they cannot say it and stuff like that. I'm like, because the pages are numbered and they're going from like, the lower to the upper. So they have to be in order in order for that. So once you tell them, once they show you that they know how to do it, but they did not know how to express it. And that's the thing. Because metaphor allows you to say, oh, okay, I understand what this thing is. Like sorting algorithm, when you are leaving out, when you're moving out of an apartment in New York, you have a box, you have like, different type of containers. With the different type of containers, exactly like, what to put in there. So the containers is your data structure. And then how you move like those boxes is your algorithm. So the thing is, when you start like really putting those big like terms into layman's term, people can relate to it. Can you find an example where somebody can relate to it? And can they formulate it in their head? And then after that, I'm going to translate some of the things that I did in French when I was teaching those stuff. And I will do it in English, and you will see firsthand but it's hard to find those. And hopefully it's going to become a community effort where we're going to be teaching algorithm in layman terms, because I think everybody knows how to do like data structure and algorithm. They just don't have the vocabulary, and they don't know how to express themselves around it.
As you're talking, it's reminding me a lot of when I was teaching school, and I had started in 6th grade and then I went down to 3rd grade. So this the age where you're teaching multiplication. And I became a very early believer in whenever you're teaching a new concept or just teaching in general, if you can find a topic that your students relate to, and infuse that into your lesson, they'll listen more carefully because they're interested in that topic, but it makes more sense to them. And I think a good example of that is a lot of my students loved Minecraft. So when I would start teaching multiplication, we would pull up Minecraft and we would look at making, building blocks of like 3 up and 3 across. And then all of a sudden it was like 3 times 3 was the easiest thing in the world to them. They could see it and they loved the Minecraft,
Exactly.
If you can do that with programming though, If
Yeah.
you can take these concepts, like you were mentioning, dependency injection and the constructor and ng on init, talk about those in everyday common terms, like you're saying,
Mhm.
all of a sudden the difficulty just sort of melts away little by little, but it does. And it
Yeah.
becomes something that people are excited about, like with me, no mystery what I'm interested in, right? Like as soon as somebody starts talking about Star Wars,
Yes.
you've got me hooked. And if anybody would do that with programming, I feel like, let's bring it down. I don't want to say dumb it down, because you're not dumbing it
No,
down.
no,
You're
you're not
just,
dumbing it down. I think it's even harder that way.
right.
You're making it accessible. You're making it
Yes.
like, I don't know if pertinent is it's an English word, but in French, you're making it relevant.
Yes.
It's impactful. That's the thing. You're making it because the moment they have that, the mental, and that's the thing, the moment they draw that mental model, it's never gonna go away. I
Right.
still know the planets, how you
Like
call it,
order.
how the planets are like, lined up
Order.
because of a mnemonics in French.
Yeah.
Maman, veux-tu me jouer sur un nouveau piano? So
Yeah.
Maman was Mercury, V, Venus, T was Terra, which is like Earth, and so forth and so on.
Nice.
I
Yeah.
have known that since I was 6 years old.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
in my head. Anytime I want to see it, I just say it in my head, and I'm like, okay. I have another algorithm that I call like I find like English name to them, to those challenges, and I call it the hotel host and his assistant. Whenever they say like, can you sort like can you put like the zeros in front or in the back? I call it like the hotel room algorithm. That's how I call it. And I'll show you in one of those videos, like how do you use the hotel host as your first pointer and the assistant as the second pointer. And when I explained that to my wife and to other people who were not in computer science, they were like, okay, I know exactly how to do this.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, totally. I've shared this on my podcast on the Dev Life before, but I really agree with this idea. And it's something that Einstein actually said, which was that if you can explain something to a 5-year-old, like that's when you know that you truly understand something, when you can explain it that simply. And I think that that's something that would really help, not just Angular, but programming in general. If we could start explaining things at that level to begin with and help, and then building from there, I think that would really help people not just be interested, but stay in programming. So many people start and then they're like, wow, that is not for me. But I think that's why we just need to make it more approachable. And I do think also that that's why John Papa's Tour of Heroes is so effective, because he's taking something that we can all relate to, especially nowadays. Superheroes are all the buzz. Everybody's watching the latest Avengers. And so it's something we can all relate to.
Yeah.
So,
And I think like, that's the thing, like, I think we should kind of stay away from telling to people, I'm going to teach you how to program, because you are already putting a barrier in there when you tell to somebody they don't know how to program.
Right.
To me, if you just live in a big city or like wherever you live, you are solving algorithm, you are solving problem every single day. So you already know how to program. What you need to know is how to express yourself through programming. That's a different way of presenting it. Because every single time I put those data, I struggle with data structure and algorithms. For the life of me, I'm never gonna make it to the Google 45-minute data structure and algorithm, because I forget everything at the moment they tell me. But when I take my time and I sit down, I can always figure out a way to do it. But the thing is, if you tell people you don't know how to do this, let me teach you, it's different when you say you already know, I'm just going to show you how you're going to express yourself. But I know you already know this. So I think that's a different way of approaching those kind of stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love that, Ady. I think that's awesome. And it kind of goes to show too, like a lot of it is that mental game, right? And
Yes.
so much of the words that we say to ourselves or to each other, but I love that you're setting them up right from the beginning to look, you've already done this.
Yep.
You already know it. That's so cool. Okay,
Yeah.
well, so let me ask then, like, are there any final thoughts or ideas that you would like to leave with anybody watching this?
Yeah, so since it is like an Angular centric first discussion, whatever it is you're going to get involved in, have a true passion for it. That's the only way you're going to stick with it. You know, there's been days where I felt like, why am I even calling myself an Angular developer? I suck at this.
Right.
You know, and there's been days where I felt like, you know, I was a badass, you know. But the thing is, you don't live for those highs and those lows. You live for the deltas. I said to my friend, a lot of time when we're looking at evolving into something, the utopia part is we always go in a linear way. So either like when you're trying to lose weight, you want to go from here to here. Or when you want to get rich, you want to go from earning this to earning that. You see that linear path? Right. It's utopia. Life is like that little curve. You go up a little, down a little, up a little, down a little. Now strive to make sure that like that delta between up and down is always an evolving one. So if you had 3 up, maybe go 1 down. Now you still have 2 up. You know, you're not down. You're like down by 1, but you're still up by 2. And then strive for those little delta of like, you know, progression, like, you know, little by little, the staircase, whatever is that analogy that you can find. But even the staircase, there's no staircase that goes up and down, but life is about up and downs, you know, and find that happiness in those deltas. Like, you know, when you get comfortable, you plateau. So the moment that you start going down, it means that you are ready to progress, but because you finally has like in front of you something that is hard and that you have to master. So take that, be humble about it, go down, and then be ready to pick yourself and go back up.
I love it. That's such important advice, because everybody will have those downs. And then that's where I would just add, and going back, you know, kind of full circle to the beginning of the conversation of making sure that you have people in your life who can support you, and making sure you really surrounded yourself with a strong network of other developers who are going through the same things or who've been through the same things and who can really buoy you up when you need that support.
Yep.
Cool. I've got the sun coming right in here. So let me.
Yeah. Yeah, my light too is a little, yeah, but anyways.
There we go. But okay. So Ady, thank you so much. This was such a good conversation. And I like your advice, your encouragement. So helpful. If anybody would like to connect with you, is Twitter the best place?
Yeah, these days, Twitter, and to a certain extent, LinkedIn, you know. Okay. But yeah, Twitter, like, you know, just don't be afraid to tag me. I'm always like up for like anything helping, like, you know, Angular programming wise, career, whatever I know, I will share. And if not, I'll help you find the answer with somebody else. That's fine. Yeah. Nice. But Twitter, yeah, mostly Twitter.
And it's your full name. So ADY GNOM.
ADY NGOM.
Oh, okay. Sorry. NGOM.
There you go.
There we go. Okay. I've got to make sure I've done that the right way. Then I think we should create another Twitter for you that's like Goku Ady or something.
That guy is hype all the time. I don't think my wife will like that, but yeah.
That'd be awesome.
We'll see about it. Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks again. And I will look very much forward to definitely. And yeah, I'll be looking forward to TinyConf.
All right. Thank you so much.